Hello and good morning. You are watching the Star Spangled Sit-Down. I am your host, Bobby Allison Jr., the Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Kingston. And we are so happy and grateful to be joined today by a couple of my friends. We got Lee Giat, aviator. We have Dr. Clair Nelson. Of course, you guys have probably seen her before. She is the founder of the Institute of Caribbean Studies, as well as the Caribbean Space Society. Thank you all for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, happy to be here, Bobby.
So tell us, Lee, you are embarking on Passage that will see you flying your plane, the Spirit of Science, solo across the Caribbean and Latin America for 60 days to bring school supplies, lab equipment to communities in need, and to host, sessions on STEAM and science-based education. So you started this on Saturday, and you got to Jamaica a couple of days ago. Tell us more about Passage and why you decided to marry, your love for space science and aviation.
Yeah, so it's been wonderful being here in Jamaica. We've already done a lot of outreach events in both Kingston and Mandeville, and I landed in Norman Manley with the goal of just sharing my love for science with the future of Jamaica, and I grew up not being very good at math. I was really struggling in school, and I'm an artist by trade. I have a video production company. I'm a very creative person, but I do appreciate what science and STEM, STEAM as well. I mean, it is art as well. What it does for the future, the future of doctors and engineers and pilots and astronauts, and it drives the economy and it drives the future. So I wanted to provide kids with that belief in themselves that they can accomplish whatever they set out to do, and hopefully provide some of the tools that they need to do it.
Awesome. So for those of you watching at home, you'll have a chance right now to send in some questions. If you have got questions for Lee, if you got questions for Dr. Nelson, let us know. Give us a shout out. Well, we might pull up your question during the program. So Dr. Nelson, how did you guys connect? And tell us how Caribbean Space Society is supporting this partnership while Lee is here in Jamaica.
Well, we connected at the Analog Astronaut Conference in May at the Biosphere in Arizona. Yes,
cool.
There's such a thing.
The Biodome.
Yeah, and Lee was actually the official space communicator making a documentary on that event.
Yeah.
And I was there as a mini speaker. I say mini speaker, I didn't have a full-blown speech, but I was there performing, doing an exit of my performance, Moon Runnings, the life and time of the first Jamaican on the moon.
Yeah.
Which is a story I have made up set in the future.
Yes.
In 2036, but it's a way of getting people engaged in space science. And so we met there when he told me he wants to come to Jamaica as one of his stops, and he was having a challenge, getting in touch with the person who said they would have helped him. I said, look no further, you have found her.
Right.
So that was basically it. In April, May, we just decided, okay, let's do this together. So I helped with the Bahamas leg and the Jamaica leg, because our intention is to launch a club in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And we already have a club here. And the whole purpose of the Caribbean Space Society is to ensure that the Caribbean is not left behind as humanity moves forward in exploring the cosmos. Right. And not only exploring the cosmos, there's also space economy that's growing. And of course, having a seat at the table at the UN, we have to make sure our countries are up to date. They're not. Right. Since I cannot affect the government, I said, let me try and affect the future. So our clubs are in colleges, and we hope out of this trip to get at least one club to be born in a high school here.
That would be awesome. So you mentioned that he said he wanted to come to Jamaica. So what about the Caribbean? Why? Tell us, number one, tell us where you're going on this trip, and then tell why the Caribbean, why Latin America?
Yeah, so I'm going throughout the Caribbean and South America. Right. So tomorrow I'm going to Colombia, and then after that we're going to Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and Argentina. Cool. Before heading back to the States. So the Caribbean was really inspired by my father. So he unfortunately, he passed away in a plane crash in 2020, and I had to make a decision to either continue to fly or to never fly again. And I have flown in the Caribbean before, never Jamaica, but I've flown to a few islands in the Caribbean with my dad. His nickname in Miami, where I grew up, is the pilot of the Caribbean. Nice. That was his nickname. He used to do a lot of cargo flights and a lot of aid relief missions, for hurricanes, and I got to join him on some of those. And so I've gotten to meet a few people and a few connections that I've had around the Caribbean. And I knew that I wanted to go back and to also expand on that by continuing down to South America.
You mentioned flying at a young age. I saw that you got your pilot's license at 17.
Yeah.
And then you also just mentioned you're not very good at math. So tell us, because most people, when they think of space or they think of aviation, you think that you have to be great at math. So get a little bit into that aspect. And how did you overcome that?
For sure. Yeah. So nowadays you really don't have to be super math oriented. For me, it was very easy to learn about the airplane and the airplane systems, and I'm very visual. So luckily there's a lot of diagrams and there's a lot of procedural stuff and step-by-step instructions and
taking apart the engine, you can do that.
Yeah. And you know, and learning the inner workings of the engines, and and today I'm pretty confident I can pretty much tear the engine apart and put it back together.
Nice.
Just to have that understanding from a safety perspective. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's really, if you want something that bad, then it is possible. And in college, I failed calculus 9 times.
Okay.
And ended up passing it.
Was that a requirement to pass calculus?
Yes, for an astrophysics degree, but that, I ended up just shifting over more toward aviation and continuing my aviation journey. But I did know that I wanted to pass calculus 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing that, but it was a long road to get there, and a lot of setbacks and a lot of trial and error. But
I can imagine. You guys went to Mandeville.
Yes.
Dr. Nelson, why did you choose Mandeville, and how has the time in Jamaica been?
It chose Mandeville because the Caribbean Space Advocates Club in Jamaica is at Northern Caribbean University. The other 2 are in University of Trinidad and Tobago and University of Guyana. So there are 3 locations we got started with in 2021. Mm-hmm. And so NCU was obviously the obvious choice. We couldn't come here. We had stargazing. Yeah. And so that's he's like excited about that. So we left telescopes in Mandeville. At NCU, we're leaving telescopes at Michael. And so we had a stargazing night. The Minister of Education was there. Yes. We had really good feedback, and I think a waking of something exciting for the kids who were there.
Right.
So, and last night was fabulous because we could see the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars.
The conjunction of the moon and Mars, because the moon and Mars were really, really close to each other right before the moon passed over. But we got to see them both through the same eyepiece in the telescope. Which is it
easier to see the stars here in Jamaica than it would be in Florida, for instance?
Not necessarily. It's really just finding a place without light pollution.
Right.
So luckily we had big open fields to work with at both MICO and NCU. Nice. So it was really, really nice. And a lot of kids got to see through a telescope for the first time.
That's awesome. Tell us about the supplies that you're bringing.
Yeah, so we brought all sorts of stuff for teachers because through my conversations with Dr. Nelson, there was a lot of need for teachers to build STEM curriculum. So we brought a lot of classroom essentials, things like whiteboards and markers and pens, pencils, paper, all that sort of stuff. Some STEM kits from one of our partners, Janet's Planet.
Right.
And those are for kids to learn how to build and learn how to code. We brought some folders with NASA curriculum that we've provided, and telescopes as well, telescopes and eyepieces.
You guys are watching the Star Spangled Sit-Down. We are here with Lee Giat and Dr. Clair Nelson. Remember, you can send in your questions into the chat. Where did you get the donations from for all these things? How are you fundraising for this project?
Yeah, so Passage is a project. A lot of people think it's a nonprofit, which it's just a project under our host nonprofit, the Southern Timing Foundation. Mm. So all of this entire trip has been funded by just the generosity of everyday people.
Good.
We don't have a lot of big corporate name sponsors, and it's really just a collaborative effort of hundreds of people who want to see this project succeed.
And I'd like to add that locally we've been so excited because we got support from the Rock Hotel.
Good.
A lot of local support,
At Island Car Rental. They were, I would say, 2 of our major donors in terms of space to sleep and a car to ride us around. So we really wanted to give them a shout out for that.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned the car riding you around, and you're flying this plane solo, but you have other members of your team. So how are you guys connecting? Where you said you're flying out of Norman Manley Airport? Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us about your next flight, and then what it'll be like once you get on the ground in Colombia, and where the rest of the team goes, and who else you have here as part of the project.
Yeah, so every place is a little bit different that I'll be going to. So once I get back to Norman Manley, I begin my flight planning, and tomorrow I'll be landing in Barranquilla, Colombia.
Cool.
And so we have a whole separate team over there, and every location where I'm going, there's a Dr. Nelson there to help coordinate.
Well, come on.
I wish I could have Dr. Nelson at every stop. That would be amazing.
A Dr. Nelson light.
Yeah, exactly. But we have an amazing person there that knows the area and knows what we're trying to accomplish. And they're in STEM. They're a lot of them are in the space industry just because that's kind of more of my background and the people that I know.
Right.
And they are just helping to figure out what is needed, what our events are going to be, and how we can use Passage to make the most impact.
And you're filming this whole process, is that correct? What do you intend to do at the end of all of that?
Yeah, so obviously we're not a multi-million-dollar, we're not even $1 million project. Right. So it's not even $100,000 project. But it's the goal for me this year, assuming that we're going to continue and build on this, is to raise awareness.
Right.
So something, my full-time job is making videos. And I have a film production studio in Florida, and some of my team is here filming for a documentary series called Rite of Passage.
Right.
And the goal is to raise awareness for all the stuff that we're doing, raise awareness for these communities. And actually, a lot of the proceeds from selling the documentary will come right back into the project for the future and
just
continue.
Tell them where it's going to be aired.
Say again?
Tell them where it's going to be aired. That's exciting.
Yeah, on June 17th, 2023, it's premiering at Kennedy Space Center.
That is awesome.
Yep.
June 17th, 2023, Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah.
That is really, really cool. You're from Florida. Speaking of Kennedy Space Center, you're from Florida. Tell us a bit about your background growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up in South Florida.
Yep.
And went to the University of North Florida up in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where I currently live. And I learned to fly down, around Miami and Fort Lauderdale over the Everglades.
And you're just a little baby. And when was the first time you took control of a plane? How old were you?
My first logged flight hour, I was 7. That I actually logged in my logbook that I still have today. I actually have it at my hotel.
Children at home. Start flying planes. Yeah. You gotta catch up to Lee.
I was a little bit lucky, obviously I had my dad there and he was my flight instructor, but I understand it's very expensive and it's pretty tough, but starting with the ground school and there's a lot of free resources on YouTube and on the internet that anybody can get started with, just to get that head start for when the time comes to start flying.
I'm going to pull up a shout out. It's my mom. I always pull up my mom's questions. She's watching on Facebook.
Hi, Bobby's mom.
Hello. Good morning. She says, "Good morning, Bobby," and to Jamaica. Thank you, Mom. You mentioned the resources. I want to talk about Jamaica specifically in terms of STEM education and space education. So, what and I kind of like that you started with the fact that, hey, I wasn't great at mathematics, but what are students able to? How many resources are there available for young students in Jamaica who are trying to become engineers and scientists? And
it is very challenging.
Yeah.
Not even the better high schools, and Jamaica has its own high school
hierarchy.
Yeah. So I went to St. Jude's High School, for those of you listening from Jamaica. Fidelitas forever. And at my era, we had a physics lab, a chemistry lab, a biology lab, and we were one of the better high schools in those days.
Right.
So for me, it was easy. But most kids do not have that. And so one of the things that we want to get out of this is to begin to have the conversation and try to get some partnerships with universities, but also school districts in the U.S.
Right.
Maybe Massachusetts School District. We're kind of looking at that because Lieutenant Governor is from Jamaica originally.
Right.
Governor of Maryland is from Jamaica, and we can pull off something there. So we're not his parents or his grandparents, whatever, same difference.
Yes.
But the fact is that we're hoping to lay the groundwork. So that's why Michael was so important, because they're teaching teachers.
Right.
So if we can get support to be like a STEM center of excellence, and we don't have to put every school has to have the full complete lab. But can you imagine if at Michael we could have like one real lab where students could visit and high schools could rent for a week or whatever. Then everybody have exposure to actually touch the real thing. And in the meantime, there's so much information now online and so many virtual labs in the school systems in the USA. So as the US government and USAID they begin to think about the support they're giving, I want to bring awareness that, hey, let's talk about doing some virtual labs, virtual teacher training, all this around STEAM, math in particular, and the literacy, STEM literacy, increasing that. So I know it's still a pillar that the U.S. government is interested in funding. And so for me, it's a way of bringing that conversation into the conversations that we've been having with State Department and AID.
Yes, absolutely. So the U.S. also, right in this room that we're in right now, we have STEAM classes. We're very, very interested in that, and so we're happy to have you guys here today.
Yeah, 3D printers and computers.
We got 3D printers
really cool.
Now. I don't really know how they work. We haven't done, but we'll get to
maybe Aaron over there.
Yeah, exactly. So again, Lee, what advice would you give to the young viewers, both in Jamaica and the Caribbean and Latin America, if they wanted to get interested in aviation or space science?
Yeah, like Dr. Nelson said, there's so many resources on the internet today where, we have unlimited access to information on all sorts of careers. We're producing a series as well once we get back to the United States called Passage Pro, which we're interviewing paleontologists and climate scientists and astronauts to give those kids who may not know what to do, or maybe they do and they want like that extra step, the blueprint on how to get there, what the life is like of a paleontologist, how to get there, and what are the steps and what to expect, from just a life perspective. So the fact that we went to MICO and, it's a 200-year-old university and they've never had a stargazing event before is amazing. And the fact that we were able to do it and have, how many people were there? Over
close to 100, 150 almost.
Yeah, almost 200 people.
So a stargazing event, I'm assuming you just have the telescopes propped up.
Telescopes on the lawn.
We had AAJ show up
and astronomers of Jamaica came out with a big super-powered scope. Well, not big for us in Jamaica, not big like America, but
it's nice.
Super big enough telescopes that could actually see more detail. Right. And they had 7 that they had brought with them. So 4 of those remain at MICO, and 3 of those have been left at NCU. And the idea is that the other teachers' colleges that came to the event will get 1 scope each. And so we'll now begin to hook them into like sending them online stuff if they want to really teach themselves to continue. And this is really the start. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's another thing too, is the Astronomy Association of Jamaica. That's a resource for anybody to use.
Right.
And, I got interested in space, but through a free astronomy club, where I grew up.
Right.
So there are amazing people in Jamaica doing these things and spreading the word of science and providing free resources for kids. And I guess the goal is just to help amplify their voices and continue to build on that.
Big thing, because out of that, now Michael actually wants to think about doing maybe a quarterly stargazing event with AAJ.
Yeah.
So there we're ready to transform something. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I've seen you describe yourself as an astronaut in training. Tell us about that. What does that mean, and how would one
Yeah, so that's kind of something that the press likes to use on social media and in the publications. So I went through astronaut training for a TV show called Exploration Outer Space. I've been to Russia, to Star City, Russia, where the first astronaut Yuri Gagarin trained, and got to go through that whole experience. But nowadays, it's amazing because you don't have to be affiliated with NASA or any specific organization to take those steps to becoming an astronaut. So you can go get your pilot's license, you can get your scuba diving certification, you can learn languages and figure out what you want to do and how to bring that job up to space. For me, it's filmmaking.
Right.
So you can pretty much, with the commercialization of space, which I think is the next giant leap, not necessarily, even though we're taking the steps to go to Mars, I think the fact that space is being commercialized just like aviation was, all those years ago, is how we're going to get there. So anybody is really able to prepare to be an astronaut if they take those steps.
Dr. Nelson, do you think we'll have a Jamaican-born astronaut?
Well, if I have anything, if I haven't, I tell my story about being the first Jamaican on the moon because I'm very much into this lunar settlement thing, and I have a lab that I'm working on doing some solar energy research and wireless power research projects we're proposing to do at Morgan State in Maryland.
Yeah.
And so the Analog Astronaut Conference that I went to has now fired me up. I want to do an analog astronaut mission in Caribbean somewhere where people can come and at least take a research project and begin training.
That sounds awesome. So we're coming to the end of the interview, but Lee, I just want to ask you, what's next for you after this Passage project?
No idea. Well, the beauty of Passage is that I am completely open to what's next,
right.
and so is our entire team. We are here to learn how to do this the best, because something like this hasn't been done before to this scale and in this way. So whether it's, in the coming years splitting it up, maybe we do focus more on the Caribbean one year and maybe some South American countries another year, or maybe expand globally. I have no idea, but I'm open to whatever the future holds, and I'm just trying to make the most impact with what we have here.
Well, we're very, very happy that you're able to come. We're very happy that you're able to bring some resources to Jamaican teachers, to Jamaican educators, Jamaican students, and the Jamaican public. So we're very happy that you came. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, for facilitating it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being on the program today. And tell us again, Kennedy Space Center is when the show's going to launch.
Yeah. So anybody that donates a certain amount will get tickets as well currently while we still have them available. So if anybody can go to our website at passageflight.org and get those tickets by donating to our cause. And June 17th, it's going to be fun.
Awesome. Passageflight.org. Thank you all again for joining us in the Star Spangled Sit-Down. Everybody out there, you have a wonderful rest of your day. And that was the Star Spangled Sit-Down.